Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are, and welcome to the 9th installment of FNA's Suptech Broadcast series. With apologies for being a few minutes late, let's begin. Before I begin, I would like to provide some quick housekeeping remarks. This broadcast follows a 60-minute format. Roughly 45 minutes of that will be spent talking with our guests, and then we'll have a 15-minute Q&A at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, as many people do, please don't use the chat option, as that makes it harder to track your question. Instead, use the Q&A widget, and then our guests will be able to answer as many questions as they can during the Q&A in the final 15 minutes of the session. For those of you who are not familiar with FNA, we're an advanced analytics and simulation technology company. We work across 4 core sectors, namely central banks, commercial banks, financial market infrastructures, or FMIs, and national security. Our software is tailored as so-called solutions for each sector. So where a central bank might use our technology for RTGS stress testing, a commercial bank might use our technology to optimize its internal liquidity usage. We're very active as a company in the Suptech space. This slide here, or the next slide, briefly explains our core collaboration areas with central banks and financial authorities. Those are loan data analytics, where we look at granular loan data that is collected by central banks. Then we have RTGS stress testing, where we implement stress scenarios for RTGS systems and stress them. And then we have liquidity monitoring, which is a way to monitor liquidity, also based on RTGS data. And all of this is underpinned by this advanced network analytics and simulation capabilities of our platform. All right, so let's go to the to today's session. So today we have Julapa Jagtiani from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, and we have Matei Dohotaru from the Financial Stability and Integrity Unit at the World Bank Group. We have a few technical issues, so we're just waiting for Ms. Jagtiani to join, and then we will begin the session as soon as she joins. So I will just pause here for 30 seconds to a minute, and then you will all have a chance to read the bios of our speakers for today until we get started. I can add that our discussion today will revolve around the intricate world of Suptech development and implementation, and we'll focus on bridging gaps across economies. Our speakers have extensive experience working in the Suptech space, both from the point of view of the Federal Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve System, and also from the more global perspective of the World Bank Group. Okay, we're still waiting to solve the problems on Julapa Jagtiani's end, so I think we'll just get started with you, Matei, and we can initiate the discussion, and hopefully Julapa will be able to join us shortly.
Sure, Thomas, let's start.
All right, so let me put the first question to you. Could you briefly introduce your work, and especially related to Suptech and your background at the World Bank?
Sure, thank you. First of all, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for FNA for the invitation. So, yeah, maybe to start with a joke. So, we're having in the institution many meetings every day, and I'll say every time when I'm talking about technology, something basic is not working. So this is absolutely normal that one speaker cannot join, and I'm usually used to be part of one-man show. So regarding what we are doing, so of course I will start more broadly saying that actually at the World Bank we are paying a lot of attention to technology, and this is not referring strictly to the financial sector. So almost every area we are supporting our clients. So we're paying a lot of attention to technology, to digitalization, digital transformation. And the reason is obvious for this audience. So this is bringing innovation, this is bringing productivity and providing access, better access to different services for the population. So, and this definitely is valuable for the financial sector, which usually leads digital innovation and transformation in countries. So as regard of our work, so I can say we're starting to support supervisors in implementing IT solution for supervision to enhance their work much earlier than the term itself, Suptech, was invented. So this is part of our FSAP programs, Financial Sector Assessment Program, so which started about 20 years ago. It's a joint exercise between World Bank and IMF, and there we have a important work stream which is referring to assessing supervisors in compliance with Basel Core principle for effective supervision. And we have a number of principles related to technology. So we are paying attention to technology and to digital transformation and use of technology for supervision for many years. This is the same part of our technical assistance and capacity building we're doing. So especially related to risk-based supervision. So if you're talking about risk-based supervision, so usually there are three main components. It's a legal framework, it's capacity of supervisors themselves to understand the standards and apply them. And the third one is technology. I can say that the first two one kind of got more attention during the years, but things started to change. And now in the recent few years, so we're starting to look at the Suptech like a separate work stream because the demand was high from supervisors. Many supervisors already reach a quite high quality of regulatory framework, legal framework. They have capacity, but somehow technology remained behind. So in this sense, we decided to develop a separate product with the aim to support supervisors to implement Suptech solutions. So we have three main pillars in this program related to Suptech technology. So first pillar is related to capacity building and exchange of expertise. This is the first pillar. The second one is diagnosis and support for developing of Suptech roadmap. And the third one is implementation. So this is our kind of a main focus on Suptech. I can mention also we're doing some kind of analytics, so publications. So if you search in your browser, so you definitely find a few recent publications related on Suptech prepared by my colleagues and by myself in the recent years.
Well, thanks so much, Matei. So from the point of view of the World Bank, what are some of the key differences you see in the needs and challenges between advanced economies like the US versus the emerging market economies that you are supporting?
Yes, so of course our focus is very much on emerging markets as an institution. So I'm not saying we're not supporting advanced economies, but as an institution very much we're focusing on emerging markets. If talking about the needs, I would say needs are more or less the same for all supervisors around the world. The intensity of these needs maybe is different. Because what want supervisors? They want to have an efficient risk-based supervision. They want to be able to identify the risk. They want to be able to have proactive measures and mitigation measures to avoid any crisis. And this is valid for everybody. Of course, there is a different sophistication of a financial sector. So it's more basic financial sector for my basic products, and more sophisticated industries, sectors where a supervisor should come with a more complex solution. But the basic needs are more or less the same. If regards the challenges here, I would say there are differences. So, and of course, there are differences at the level of each single jurisdiction. So every time when we start a project, so we see some common challenges, but of course, usually there are some individual challenges very specific for each country. So regarding the challenges, so I'll mention the first one is, which is a difference between advanced economy and emerging market economies, is related to resources. So in case of developed economies, so usually supervisors they have quite a good financial independence and autonomy. So they can invest significant resources in updating their IT solutions. I'm not saying the resources are endless, but at least they have. It's much more complicated in low-income countries where supervisors, which are part of a central bank, or maybe not part of a central bank, they usually do not have sufficient resources to invest in this technology. Of course, the solution can be identified. If talking about resources, I'll mention also the human resources, which may be common for both type of group of countries, because it's very difficult to identify people in the supervision who have deep knowledge in technology, deep understanding of supervision, and know how to manage an IT project, a complex IT project. So this is something which has to be built. It's not, I mean, extremely complicated. And of course, when you have financial resources, you're dealing with this much more easier. The second one, I will say the legacy systems. So the transition to new solution. So it's not easy because you have to take into consideration what you have already implemented. And from this perspective, I would say for emerging market, it's easier because the number of solutions already running in the supervisory authority are less. So there are cases when there are thousands and thousands of IT solutions which were implemented on different platforms at different times. And of course, they cannot just be retired. There should be a transition of data from this solution and a new platform, which is quite a complicated process. And usually it's run by different departments, or maybe it's run by different people. So legacy system is a big challenge, which I'll say it's common for both types of group of countries. The third one, which I would mention, so it's data quality. So in case of developed economies, data quality, it's much better. In case of emerging market, the data quality is significantly lower in most of the cases. And it's coming from the perspective that the reporting entities themselves, they not always have advanced solutions for the reporting, so-called RegTech solutions, which will ensure data quality, the validation, the cross-validation, and so on. It's not still in place. So this is a big challenge. So before starting to put something on top, any analytical solutions or for visualization, so the basic things which should be solved is related to data quality. And maybe last one to mention about the challenges. So it's data governance. So we have a lot of fragmentation. We have issues with who is the owner of the data, how the data is required, overlapping of data, and so on. So which is, again, quite common in emerging market economies. Data governance is much better in more developed economies, but still quite a common challenge.
Well, thanks, Matei. That's very comprehensive. So I'm glad to hear there are some advantages to emerging market and developing economies, namely that you can start from scratch in some cases. You don't have to deal with as many legacy systems, but otherwise there seem to be quite a few challenges to overcome. I'm very happy to see that Julapa has joined. Hi, Julapa. Good to have you on board.
Sorry.
No worries.
Not difficult to join on. I got in through my Gmail.
It's always tricky with these video platforms. They have a life of their own. But very glad to have you with us. So I'm going to put the first question to you. If you could please briefly introduce your work related to Suptech and also briefly what you do at the Federal Reserve.
Sure. A question for you. So have you gone through several questions, or is this we're just at the first question?
So I've just covered the first and second question with Matei. So this is the first question to you, and then I'll put the second one to you as well.
Okay. Yes. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So in terms of my work, my background, I'm a senior economic advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. And so my work, I'm an economist, but I'm in banking supervision. So my work has been on mostly policy and focusing on fintech and banking supervision. I don't run the Suptech program at the Fed, but I can tell you what is going on, what we are doing at the Federal Reserve. That first, I think the term Suptech, sometimes it can be quite broad, depends on how you view it. And so I'm just gonna, for this purpose, for today's discussion, I would just say anything that is any supervisory tool that leverage today's technology for banking supervision. And so in that sense, I would actually even start with our CCAR stress testing, which is not a Suptech program, but CCAR stress testing started after the financial crisis in 2008. So we started doing some basic model to project losses in 2009. But it has been evolving hugely over the years. And the reason I think that it is one of the Suptech tools is that it actually utilizes a gigantic amount of data, big data, because several 100 million observations of loan accounts are being submitted to the Federal Reserve each month. And so we use that data, big data, to run, sorry, to run our own model to project losses over the next 2 years and determine whether banks would be allowed to pay dividend and whether they need to are required to raise more capital. So that is from the Fed perspective, but also the banks themselves, also maybe even more Suptech, the more tech oriented in that. They may actually use more advanced AI/ML technology to run on their own data to also estimate to estimate their own loss as well. So we are doing it separately from the Fed side and also the bank side, and then we kind of reconcile the two to understand what the difference, and sometimes the difference can be quite large. Now, there are also other Suptech programs that I think more typical Suptech that we would think of, like we started using NLP, natural language processing, to read a huge amount of exam report, like thousands and many thousand pages. But also we can kind of set a goal, asking specific questions, and then the tool would be able to kind of pick up, write a quick summary. It's not ChatGPT, but it's a kind of, it learns from this our own exam report, and it would pick up and kind of highlights, write a summary for us in response to what we are interested to understand. So we save a lot of time. We don't have to read the entire many thousand pages. That's what it's evolving. It's just starting. We just that is one thing that we are looking at. Also, the digitization of the basic call report data that we have quarterly. Banks have been required to submit call report quarterly, and this is all banks, not just large banks like in the CCAR. So we kind of try to digitize this huge number, a large number of items. So it's easier, more user-friendly when examiners want to go and look at that to understand the trend or for do peer comparison. This would be a useful tool. And so I think that is one of Suptech tools. Also, we have given now a lot of novel activities with fintech partnership, with banks are partnering with fintech to use their machine AI, ML, and data that come from other sources, that through these third-party vendors. And that's banking as a service. There are also crypto activities. So we have this fintech supervision program at the Fed, focused on all these novel activities. So we utilize whatever tools we could get, but basically these activities itself high tech or a new innovations that we are doing it. That requires new skills that we are going through a lot of training for examiners, or hiring new people with the right skills to look at blockchain, asset tokenization, deposit tokenization. Some banks have metaverse land or crypto lending, crypto wallet custody, all kinds of tech stuff that we are working on at the Fed. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, comprehensively, I would say. Thanks, Julapa. I have a follow-up question. So, did I get it correctly that so one of your tools is to scan your own examinations of banks and summarize them? And I was just wondering, what is the reason why you need to do that?
We have not so it's not just summarizing these many thousand pages, but it's can be focusing on certain things. If we have questions about liquidity issues or risk at the specific banks, we can look back at many exam reports and see how it has evolved over the years, and we could get a summary highlight of that would likely respond to our questions or concern about the bank. Yes, save us a lot of time.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. I think I'm going to skip ahead to the third question for you, Matei. So from your point of view of working with emerging markets and developing economies, what have been the biggest pain points or roadblocks you've encountered to to develop Suptech solutions across the different stages of development. So from data collection to processing, analytics, and perhaps even visualization.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So maybe I'll start asking from a perspective of a person who was involved in the implementation of Suptech solutions. So there are many pain points in the process. So that's why there are not so many volunteers in a supervisory authority who would like to lead the implementation of Suptech solutions. So this is remind me of a popular meme on social media where there's a crowd of people and there is a question, who wants transformation, who wants innovation? And everybody is raising their hand. And when you ask who wants to lead innovation and transformation, no one is there. Because it's indeed a lot of pain. It's very difficult to make people happy, and it's almost impossible when you're talking about implementation of Suptech solutions, because there are different needs, different visions, and it's difficult. But maybe for jumping on what you ask about the data collection, visualization, I don't know, dissemination. So I'll start with the biggest pain point, which is related to development of a Suptech strategy. So our strong recommendation for all supervisors before jumping and start to implement any solution is just to have a long-term vision, what they are planning to do. Otherwise, they'll create a constellation of all kinds of solutions which will not interact with each other, which will be built on different platforms, different technology, which will not interact. There will be a redundancy of data, there will be a redundancy of solution, very expensive to maintain, very expensive to train people. So this is, from my perspective, is the first pain point to convince everybody that they need a strategy, long-term strategy on Suptech solution. And here I'll mention maybe a few aspects. First of all, is incentive. Quite often, supervisors may say, why do I need to invest in Suptech solutions if nothing happened? So it's pretty easy from my work on this area. It's pretty easy to convince supervisors that they need to invest in a Suptech solution once they already faced recently a crisis. So they realize that the cost of a crisis is many, many times higher than cost of investing of Suptech tools, which will support to prevent or mitigate or give more information for supervisor to react. Well, it's a long period of nothing happening. So the impression, oh, it was never going to come. So why do I need to spend money? So if something is working, why do I need to change it? Unfortunately, we cannot see that so easy that something is not working and the risk is accumulated, which is going to explode in future. So it's like, I like to compare the financial industry to our industry, which is aviation and health industry. So in aviation, there is such a term like metal fatigue. So when small cracks are starting to appear in the metal and it's not visible for human eye, but they're there, and you need special tools and technology to identify these small cracks to avoid a bigger disaster later. So it's the same with Suptech, and we're saying, okay, if it's something not happening yet, it doesn't mean it will not happen in the future. The second challenge is to find the right balance between what you need, what you can afford, what technology can offer, and all this to put in long-term perspective. So because supervisors may need a lot, but they don't have a budget for this. And maybe sometimes there is no need for such a sophistication solution. So to create this balance, it's a pretty complicated process. And of course, to convince the management there is a need to invest in solution. And it's not one-time exercise. So it's a continuous process. So imagine a supervisory authority which will have 10 different Suptech solutions dealing with 10 different processes. Let's say licensing, AML, CFT, I don't know, fit and proper assessment, you name it. Say there will be at least 10 solutions. They'll have a life cycle. So at one point they'll have to update, upgrade, and so on. So this is a constant process, and this should be clearly understood by supervisors. If referring to the implementation itself, so by far data collection, even not data collection, but data structure and data framework is the most sophisticated one, because there is a legacy system in place. The data has started to be collected for years, so it's very different from one supervisor to another. And usually we have plenty of channels, tons of reports, which are redundant, which in a different format, in a different approach, and to put all this under one single standard at the same time, not to lose information and not to increase significantly pressure on reporting entities. So it's not a trivial job. It's very difficult to achieve, to put in place a new data framework, to transition from template-based reporting to a data-centric reporting, to put in place a data governance, to put proper validations rule, to have a data library. So it's a pain. So I can tell you. So from my personal perspective, it's not so much sophisticated when we're talking about data visualization, data analytics. So as a person who's doing this for many years, so I can say tools are getting much more intuitive and user-friendly. So if 10 years ago to create a nice maybe visualization on a big data, it would take you a lot of time and it would maybe require to do some coding. Now tools are very intuitive, and with embedding AI, so you just simply can write what you need and tool will provide you. But from another perspective, you don't need many data analysts and people who know data visualization in an institution. It's enough to have just a few of them. All the rest will be just users. They'll enjoy and use this information for their decision-making process. And you have a few experts who understand the data, who know how to organize the data, multidimensional data, to create these dashboards. And I'm sure in each institution, there are people who love to do this and others who need to use it. So I'll not focus so much on visualization, on, I don't know, transformation and so on. So it's doable. I'll focus so much on the structure of data, how to get the data, to find this right balance, which I mentioned. So not to put too much pressure on reporting entities, to have a single format, to avoid redundancy, at the same time, to allow supervisors to have sufficient data and not to create a cemetery of data which is collecting and no one is looking at it.
Thank you, Matei. So Julapa, can you agree to some of these observations? Do you find that it's also mainly in the data collection and data structure space that the challenges lie, or do you also find that analytics can be challenging?
I think it's both, and of course I'm not running this Suptech program like the other speaker, right? But I think that we find I agree that the main to get it started, to get the right data, to make sure that the data is reliable, is appropriate, is compatible with the what we are looking for. And also consumer data, how do we control the access to protect consumer privacy? I think that's one key thing when we get started. But also a lot of missing data, a lot of data is not available depending on what we're looking for. For example, if we look at operational risk or cyber risk, it is difficult to look at specific institutions to evaluate the risk. So it generally, because this is like low probability but high impact kind of events, right? And so and each firm may not have that many successful cyber attack that need to be disclosed. So there is not enough data point. And so generally, there is a lot of collaboration that is required within the industry, across firms, and maybe some by region, or maybe even globally across the jurisdiction, to understand, to have a better understanding, so that Suptech tool would be more effective in predicting this risk, or even looking at trend and just to find where the risk is more concentrated, something like that. So yes, I think in that sense, it's not just the data collection is it's important that we get the right data, a sufficient data point, but then using the analytic is also has to be appropriate to what we are doing. I think that's kind of, I agree. That's yes.
So using the right tool for the job, essentially.
The right tool for the job, the right data as well. So a lot of data may be inappropriate, or also things keep changing these days. If the data is old, the technology keep getting more advancing very rapidly, and new product, new innovations, and regulation change as well. So there are also more every time regulatory loopholes is being used to avoid regulation, to go from one country to another, regulatory arbitrage. It's difficult for regulators to actually catch up with all these new innovations. So I think that's new tools, better tools our tools have to keep improving. A lot of VPNs are now using to also hide the location of activities a lot of times these days. And so so things move to the location where regulations are more relaxed, right? And so it's basically activities keep moving around. So that's one thing that is a challenge that we all have to work together to collaborate to make sure that we catch all this.
So on that point, so how much collaboration do you find there is across countries in the Suptech space when it comes to using the right tools and sort of cross-border initiatives? And the next question would be, are there opportunities for more types of collaboration?
Yeah, in terms of collaboration, I'm not sure, but I don't think there is much going on, and it is important, it is needed. Thinking about Suptech as a tool, Suptech requires a lot of data, huge amount of data, and also data sharing, open banking. For example, the open banking regulation is not, it varies across jurisdiction, right? In some countries, banks are required to share data to other lenders. In some countries, and actually the other lenders, payment platform, and other non-bank like fintech would not have to share data with the bank. So there is a lot of differences across different countries. Europe has something. Asia may have something different, and in the US we don't even have open banking regulation. But a lot of data is being shared. It's actually shared more than any other jurisdiction, in my view, and that's because of market pressure. They're all doing it. There's no open banking regulation, no AI regulation. It's all this happening, and it's moving really fast. And I don't know how the BIS is doing something. Obviously, a lot of central banks are working together at the BIS. Other than that, I don't know. The World Bank probably has some program to collaborate across countries that they deal with as well. I'm not sure. At the Fed, we try to collaborate with other agencies within the Fed, within the US, because we have many different regulatory agencies: the OCC, the FDIC, the Fed, also state banking regulators, and other 50 regulators. So just within the US, a lot of collaboration is needed because sometimes regulators don't have the same guidelines, don't have the same standards. So I think the Union Bank within the US may not be subject to the same guidelines. So I think it's very important that we work together, and that's what we do. And within the Fed too, we have 12 districts, right? So within the 12 districts, there are different kind of banks. New York has more larger banks. Kansas City has mostly very tiny banks. And so the tools the relevant tools are quite different for different districts, and so different economic environment. So of course, we collaborate, we work together. We have fintech supervision program that apply across all 12 districts. We work together as a system. So yes, it's there are many different levels of collaboration, start from within the Fed, within the US, and also outside the US.
Thanks, Julapa. So let me turn to you, Matei. From the perspective of the World Bank, what kind of collaborative efforts have you observed or even taken part of internationally?
Yeah, so I'll start saying that unfortunately collaboration is not yet great in the area of Suptech, so there is a lot of room for improvement. And of course, there are kind of standard issues here. So we, regardless of where area in which we are working, we love to get more data, but we are very reluctant to share anything. So, and it's the same valid for supervisors. So all supervisors want to know what others are doing, what are success stories, what are not so success stories in the implementation of Suptech. But what it ends them to disclose and to publish, so not so much information in the public space. So, and in this sense, so we are trying to enhance collaboration. So at the beginning, I mentioned that the program on Suptech we have in place right now for 3 pillars. It's training, it's diagnosis, and implementation. So under the first pillar, so we usually try to invite other supervisors to share their experience. And of course, sometimes IT companies, especially when we're organizing these regional workshops on Suptech. And on this occasion, I definitely want to give some credit to a few supervisors, to European Central Bank, to OSFI from Canada, who participated in several of our events, and they share their practical expertise and practical issues and challenges they face during the implementation, and provide very useful recommendation for participants. I think we can do more by sharing what we are doing. And on this occasion, I would like to give credit to another supervisor from Singapore. And it's not about a success story. So it's vice versa, which supervisors are much more reluctant to share about their failure in trying to implement Suptech solutions. So a supervisory authority from Singapore, they tried to implement an eKYC solution. It didn't work. So most of the supervisors said, okay, let's keep it quiet. Now they decided to write a report and tell everybody what didn't work. So now we have opportunity to learn from their experience. So I'll be happy to see more of this from our supervisors, where we can share more about our success stories, but also about what didn't work. So to save time and money for our colleagues. We'll try to enhance collaboration, so in cooperation through this program which I mentioned, maybe in future to organize another regional workshop where we'll invite supervisors to share their expertise and lesson learned from their process of implementation of Suptech solutions.
So on that topic, Matei, could you share an example of how the World Bank has worked to bring Suptech solutions to a specific emerging market economy? And it could be a success as well as a failure. That's up to you to choose.
Fortunately, so far we have only success stories. I do not exclude that at one point we'll have a failure. So and it's normal. So if you're trying to do something and something new, so you should be ready that something will not work as planned. So it's again under the same platform or program which I mentioned. So Suptech program, training, diagnosis, and implementation. So far, I think we provide training to more than 20 countries around the world on what is Suptech, how to implement, to what to pay attention, how to develop a Suptech roadmap, pain points, more or less the same we're discussing today. So just to raise awareness and just to convince them that it is time to invest in this direction, not wait until a crisis will come and public money and taxpayers' money will have to be involved to solve it. So, as I mentioned, more than 20 countries already benefited from this activity. On the dimension of diagnosis, where we're supporting supervisors to scan the current framework and to develop a strategy for 5 years how to implement Suptech solution, up to 10 countries already received this support from our side, from all different regions and I'll say different economic profile. And we are now this year we'll have 4 or 5 countries which will receive our support on implementation side. So after training, after diagnosis, and decided what to do, so we have support for the implementation in different areas on AML safety, on consumer protection, on credit risk, and so on. So it's big. So for this year we have another project, not very big yet, under which we'll support 2 countries. So it's called Suptech Adoption Acceleration. So we hope to increase it to more jurisdiction later. So we're trying to do quite a lot. Of course, our resources are not endless. And it's important to mention that Suptech maybe is not an option for every jurisdiction. So in some cases, there may be some more fundamental issues which should be solved before jumping and implementing IT solution and Suptech solution. And Suptech solution is not a goal per se. So it's not for supervisors that need Suptech solution. Suptech solution is part of a risk-based supervision. It's part of what supervisors are doing. So it's part of a bigger work. And if some fundamental aspects are not there related to legal framework, independence, and so on, so maybe supervisors should focus to fix that first before implementing a Suptech solution. Otherwise, it's going to be a very nice toy which nobody will use. I mean, classical example, we have a sport car and no roads to drive fast on this car.
No roads, no gasoline.
Yeah.
No, actually, I agree completely that Suptech by itself should never be a goal, because it's a tool that would help examiners understand and also highlight what is going on in the supervised institutions. So it's just a tool that helps us be more effective and more efficient in supervising banking institutions. And of course, it gets obsolete as things change. Things are changing really fast these days. So one also has to be watching for, have to be keep changing, revising the tool continuously to move along with the new technology and new innovations and new ways of doing things.
So Julapa, what advice would you give to supervisors who are just starting out on a Suptech journey, and maybe in particular with in terms of stakeholder collaboration, partnerships?
We talk a lot about fintech partnership, how banks choose a partner. I think it will be a similar process, right? But any time that you're looking for a partner, first you have to, I would even say, even it's just like getting married, right? So you know what you want. And so finding this Suptech partner or fintech third-party vendors as a partner, we need to first understand what the need is. You have to understand what we are trying to accomplish, because you can't get everything all done at the same time. You have to, I've heard that you have to start slowly. And if you go too fast, right after you enter, you may not make as much progress because it's just becoming just too much, too overwhelming. Just have to start slowly and build the partnership with the right partner, because you need to know exactly what you want to focus on first and go one goal at a time and keep expanding it.
Well, thanks, Julapa. So I'll just have time for one more question before we move to the Q&A, which will be just a few minutes late. But let me start with you, Matei. So looking ahead, what do you see as the most exciting opportunities for Suptech collaboration across jurisdictions? How can we build more bridges?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we need more bridges, and it's not an easy solution. So a standard approach is just to create a platform, is to create a working group where supervisor will have an opportunity to share expertise. But from another hand, everybody is already tired of these working groups, of all these hundreds of people put somewhere and not working efficiently. So usually I'm joking, if you want to destroy a good idea, just to create a working group. So we need something smart, but which will work, because moving back to what I mentioned before, so we prefer to receive, but we are very bad at sharing. So maybe we as an institution can play a better role. So I'm not talking on behalf of entire institution. So right now, so I'm not volunteering World Bank to create a global platform for Suptech sharing, but I see that it's necessary to do something, to do this, to be flexible, efficient, where we can see in an easy way success stories, pain points, and also to get support from other supervisors who already been through this process. And instead of inventing wheel or bicycle every time, you can just cut the corners, save time, and just learn from other lessons. So it's something which is necessary to be done. So I'm not sure we are there yet, and we're not sure I have an answer how to make it to work properly, not to create another mailbox with tons of subscribers who nobody's replying or just deleting immediately their email when you're receiving a mailbox. So we need something more innovative, maybe a little bit of Suptech on this dimension.
We need Suptech to initiate Suptech development.
Yeah.
Julapa, do you have something to add to this? Do you think that there are ways to build more bridges? Maybe
yeah,
also within jurisdictions?
I see a lot of opportunities to collaborate, and particularly in new areas, a lot of changes. For example, as we are all moving towards digital economy, digital cash, digital everything is digitized, there's more need for collaboration. It's for cross-border real-time payment, for example. Now we have stable coin. There are a lot of these payment systems that are being created now. Different countries like Brazil has PIX, the Fed has Fed now, and also we have stable coins that's just to enhance this payment, real-time payment efficiency. But these systems are so low, and so they're not communicating. So it is important that there is collaboration across jurisdiction to make sure that there is KYC, AML, now digital identity that is now part of this process. Has to be, if there's a digital identity that is created by one country, we should be able to make it work across jurisdiction so that we don't have to have one identity for each country that we have banking transaction with. So I think that's something that supervisors also need to have a tool to come up with the right tool to make sure that this everything moving fast, fast payment, digital identity. We have to make sure that we have the tool to make sure that KYC, AML is embedded in this tool. Now, we also have new technology, zero knowledge proof, for example, that would actually, beyond this, making things work in terms of Suptech tool, we also could further provide protection to consumer privacy using zero knowledge technology, for example, so banks, not just in the US, but anywhere, would want to know when there's a loan application. There's no need to report everything, all the information about the borrower these days. So you can just basically, there's a tool that tells you that yes, this person's income is within the range, or something like that, or yeah, this is in the range of age. So you don't have to show your address, your date of birth, your everything, information about yourself. So I think that is coming, that now should be incorporated in the Suptech program and should be actually communicating across all jurisdictions, not just a solo Suptech tool in each country. And I said before, regulatory arbitrage. That's very important, that regulators work together to make sure that we catch all these loopholes in different countries with different rules, different technology, different tools. The collaboration is key to success.
Thanks, Julapa. So let me turn now to the questions and answers and just encourage again the audience to put their questions in the Q&A widget at the bottom of the screen. So there are quite a few questions already here. I have one asking Matei, what strategies have you found most effective for building internal buy-in and developing talent within your respective organizations? Many banks struggle with change management around new technologies.
So first of all, to have this transition, you need support from the management. It will not work anyhow if there is no support from high level of an institution to have this transition. Second point is to change your organizational structure. So if it's a long-term project, it's a long-term strategy. So don't take people from different units and departments and have these ad hoc groups, and people will not know what kind of responsibility they have. They have day-to-day responsibility, or they're in charge of leading a particular project, and it doesn't work in long-term perspective. So my strong recommendation is to create a structure, a project management team, a solid project management team. It doesn't mean to be a lot of people, but these people will know what this is their day-to-day responsibility. And the second one, to create a data governance team. So this is the way how you move in the right direction. Of course, you need an owner of a project. An owner should always come from the supervisory department. So it's a always fight, or quite common fight in a supervisory authority. Who should lead the implementation of a Suptech project? Should be this IT department or should be supervision department? So my personal belief is should be from the supervision, from the business owners, for people who need to solve their processes and procedures. Of course, IT should be very much involved in this, but this should come from a banking supervision. And if it's support from the management, if it's a structure, long-term structure, and people know their responsibility, this will work. Of course, life will happen. Implementation of Suptech tool is extremely complicated. You'll have a lot of challenges and issues, but from my perspective, this is a beauty of implementing Suptech solutions, when you have to scratch your head and to find a solution. So in a particular activity or process, you're doing this smoothly and you don't have challenges. So be worried, but AI will take your job in a few years. So as long as you start to be creative, to find different solutions, so maybe you have a chance that you will beat AI for a few years more.
That's a good point. Thank you, Matei. So I have another question for you, Julapa. what governance processes have you put in place or would like to see implemented to balance innovation with managing risks like fraud, scams, cyber threats, data privacy, and bias, if those risks are in any way exacerbated by the use of Suptech tools?
The governance to promote innovation, but also to provide the effective Suptech, come up with Suptech tools that is efficient. I'm not sure. It's just I guess there must be of course internal control, right? Internal control is key, and so collaboration across all these jurisdiction, across these regulators. We make sure that we applying the right tool. We are very slow in coming up with any regulations in the US because we want to make it right the first time, and I think that's how we. Sometimes it's less effective because we move slowly. Things move really too fast. We just work with the industry. We have this a lot of training, for all these new skill set that examiners would benefit from. We have this all things fintech that has all kinds of training for examiners to understand how to deal with all this, what to look for when they go into these banks that have these novel activities, doing new things, blockchain, metaverse, Web3, how to go about asking the right questions, and we collaborate across all these different jurisdiction to know where the problems are. We have this heat map that look at where the problems are, how to allocate our resources, and basically sharing information across regulators.
Oh, thanks, Julapa. So let me put this next question to you, Matei. So do you find that there are any specific emerging technologies in the Suptech space that you think will have a significant impact in emerging market economies in the coming years?
So the technology is borderless, so it will impact everyone. So I will not divide here emerging markets and non-emerging markets. And from my perspective, what is coming and which is big, this is AI. So this is going to change significantly the way how we're doing supervision. And of course, I mentioned before that if there is no challenge, you lose the job to AI. So this is not valid for supervisors. So I'll need to emphasize this because from two perspectives, so we have a lot of work to do. We never have enough time to do our job. There's always something else to do. And the work of a supervisor is very specific. So I would not be worried about losing your job to AI, but AI can help you a lot to automate routine, to automate things which doesn't bring added value, because the supervisor should focus on risk and decision making, not spending 80% of time to take a table from one spreadsheet and put in another spreadsheet with a different format and structure and create a chart. So this is not bringing added value. Added value when you're looking at the data and take a decision and find a strategy. So AI is going to change very much what we're doing, and particular in the dimension of unstructured data. Right now, if you're talking about offsite supervision, is very much focused on structured data. It's two-dimensional tables which are created in databases, data warehouse, and so on. But a lot of information generated at the level of a supervised entities is in unstructured data. So there's a contract, email, charts, minutes, media, and social media, and so on, which can bring a lot of insights, what is happening in a particular supervised entity. So combination of AI and processing automatically big amount of unstructured data is going to transform supervision by next year. So it's my personal belief.
Yeah, I agree that AI would not replace a human being, but human being need to also adopt new skills and understand how to use AI tools. I think that is something that we are working on very hard to train our exam staff to understand and this new technology and how to use these new tools.
Thank you both, AI. That's the ending note. this is all the time we'll have for today. So let me just say to the audience, you'll find the speakers' LinkedIn details and links to projects in the chat, as well as the slides, and that will be shared with the audience after the broadcast concludes. Coming up next, we have a CBDC broadcast on the 21st of September, and we have an FMI broadcast on the 5th of October. So I hope to see everyone for those broadcasts again. And thank you again to the speakers, Matei and Julapa, for joining us today. Thanks so much for your insights, and hope to keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you much for participants for joining. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me. Bye.